Let's get on with the energy debate now. And there's a fascinating report out today looking at Snowy Hydro 2.0. This, of course, was the scheme that was the much-loved pet project, if you like, of former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. There's all sorts of work already underway at taxpayers' expense. But Bruce Mountain, who's the director of the Victorian Energy Policy Centre, says it's going to be a white elephant. He joins me live from Melbourne now. Thanks for joining us, Bruce. Tell us about the scheme, why you think it's going to be a waste of money.
Yes. Hi, Chris. So what's the essence of it? The essence is it's a very powerful pumped hydro addition, but it's extremely complex and very expensive to build and inflexible. It will generate a great deal of power, but going with that power is pumping water uphill. And when you look at Snowy Hydro in its entirety, linking the new development with the existing hydro, you'll see it doesn't add nearly as much capacity as they claim, and will be a phenomenally expensive and inflexible plant. It's possible to do the job that Snowy offers for a fraction of the price.
Yeah, this is the critical thing. I mean, there's no bones, no secret about this. This project was driven by a desire to produce low emissions or emissions-free energy. It will produce, as you say, more energy, but at an extraordinary cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was sold at the time as a handmaiden to the transition to clean energy. I don't think it'll do that, and I'm not even sure such a handmaiden is really needed. It consumes a lot of electricity. It doesn't create electricity, it actually consumes it, because there's enormous losses in pumping the water through very long tunnels uphill again. And that means it's a net loss. So you need to build a lot more electricity production infrastructure in order to get it to operate.
A net loss? I mean, we knew it consumed electricity, so you could pump water uphill and store that hydroelectricity for when you needed it. But you're saying there's a net loss of electricity?
Yeah, so 4/10 of the electricity that it produces is lost, because you need to pump the water uphill through very long tunnels, and there's a great deal of waste in the pumps and then in friction of the water through the pipes. And that makes the round-trip cycle of pumping water and then actually using it to generate very inefficient, slow, and very expensive. It was never needed. It was never needed. I think it filled a particular gap in the national discourse at the time.
It was a political decision, right? It was a political decision to demonstrate commitment to emissions-free or low emissions energy.
Yeah, well, I think it was certainly sold as that. I think it had other particular values to the previous Prime Minister. I think given what we know about this project now, I think the government should press the pause button, should have a good look at it and say, do we really need this? And should most critically get independent advice. I don't think the government should be turning to the directors, or not to the directors, but to the management of Snowy for their advice on it. They should seek external advice.
Now, that's a key point. Reassess this project. It's all government money. It's all taxpayers' money driving this. So we want to be careful about what we're spending. But there's a few aspects of this I want to get some clarity on. One is let's put emissions aside and look at how much electricity could be generated by a plant like this. It would be far cheaper just to build a gas-fired power plant or a coal-fired power plant. What sort of cost differential are we talking about in terms of the differential in investment to produce the same amount of electricity, say, through a gas-fired plant?
Yeah. I don't think coal is the alternative in the sense that coal is just as inflexible. I think it'll be an open-cycle gas turbine or a gas engine. Those can be built at the point of use. They don't incur a cost to actually transmit electricity over a long distance to get it down to Melbourne and Sydney. As a capital outlay, it can be built for, I would estimate, 1/10 of the Snowy Hydro 2.0 cost.
So,
And as an operating cost,
I was looking for that number.
Still.
I thought you might tell us hydro is this scheme is 5 times more expensive, and that would be outrageous enough. You're saying it's 10 times more expensive than it needs to be to produce the electricity we need.
Yeah, so it's 5 times more expensive than the Prime Minister, the previous, claimed when he launched the project. But in terms of the service it offers, open cycle gas turbines is a backup capacity needed for sustain, or not, long periods, but short periods where there wasn't wind and sun and so on, could produce the service for 1/10 of the capital outlay, and would, in an operational sense, cost much the same to run, probably less. So the service can be done much more cheaply.
Yeah. So on that basis, right, it's pointless unless you put an extraordinary value on lowering those emissions. The other issue that intrigues me is that there's no additional water storage in this, is there? There's no irrigation benefit, if you like. It's merely working within the amount of water that's already stored in the snowy scheme.
Yeah. I'll just briefly clarify. Snowy hydro does not decrease emissions. It recycles electricity. It needs to pump that electricity up. And I would guess for the foreseeable future, the electricity used to pump that up will often be coal-fired generators. So that's not low-emission electricity. That's simply recycling coal-fired power. So let's just get that clear. Also, yes, it doesn't add water for the farmers. It links a very large capacity dam into the Snowy hydro system, ostensibly simply to recycle it, not to move water through the system.
Just one final point then, if I could, Bruce. There's a lot of talk about building new dams in this country now in order to increase water storage to try and help us to drought-proof the country. Are there opportunities in projects along the East Coast where that could be combined with the production of hydroelectricity?
That's an area I haven't looked at in detail. In principle, I would say no. The whole essence of the pumped hydro system is it's a closed-loop system. It doesn't let the water trickle out. It uses the same water in a cycle, and that is no gain to the farmers. The water needs to trickle out if it's going to be of use to the farmers.
You're not necessarily pumped hydro. Would any of the dams that we're perhaps talking about along the East Coast be... is there any possibility that some of them could be linked to hydro generation, or could they be lacking the required gradient?
Yeah, a dam stores water, it creates a head of water. In principle, you could leak that out and put it through a turbine. In practice, I think the scope for electricity production from that is likely to be very small. These are not large storage dams. Their flows will be driven by the needs of the farmers, not the needs of the power system. So I should think the co-benefit between electricity production and gains for the farmers is likely to be small.
Thanks for that, Bruce. Appreciate it.